So I recently received this tweet from a friend. The state of Canada right now. Yikes. Well, to truly do that justice, there has to be a little bit of context put into place. So I thought we would take this 5-minute video and talk about the history of Canadian politics with a focus on the last 20 years, which I realize sounds incredibly boring. Not even Canadians like to talk about Canadian history, but I have pictures and graphs, and so decipher yourself. Canada is the largest country in the world thanks to the crumbling of the USSR. It is broken up into 10 provinces and 3 territories. It was a member of the British Empire, just like the US was, but instead of a bloody revolution, we just decided to ask nicely in 1867. In 1965, we got our own flag, and in 1982 was when we became a fully sovereign nation. The Queen is still, however, on our money because she is technically the head of our government because of a whole big thing. Because of the vastness of Canada, there are many minority groups that make up our nation. Of course, the majority are English and white. There is, of course, the Inuit who live up in the north. There are the First Nations people who may live on reservations all over this great nation. And of course, there is the French Canadians who primarily reside in the province of Quebec. Though portrayed as nice and sweet, Canadians are made up of all of these different ethnic groups, and that can create a lot of tension. So, 1993, the Progressive Conservative Party of Canada, being led by Brian Mulroney, was in shambles. Their approval rating was at an all-time low. Mulroney decided to cut his losses and get out of there, so he left Kim Campbell in charge of not only the party, but as Prime Minister of Canada. She led that for all of like 5 seconds. They lost 154 seats in Parliament that year. They had 2 seats left when all was said and done. They were essentially obliterated from the Canadian landscape. This was, however, the rise of Jean Chrétien and his Liberal Party of Canada. They went on to do a few different things, the number one which was becoming the first party to ever get 3 successive majority governments in a row. This was the first time this had ever happened since the 1940s. Chrétien also focused on paying off the national debt, and he even eliminated the deficit for a few years. He also had his share of challenges. For the second time in Canadian history, the province of Quebec went to vote on whether or not to stay a part of Canada. In 1995, Quebecers went to the polls to really decide the future of this nation. I remember being 12 years old and going to bed and really not knowing if I was going to wake up to even have a country anymore. In a nail-biter of an election, in the truest sense of that word, it came down to a vote of 50.5% to 49.5% in favor of staying a part of Canada. And though an incredibly tough decision, I believe that Chrétien's choice not to send combat troops into Iraq is one of the best moments in Canadian history.
If military action proceeds without a new resolution of the Security Council, Canada will not participate.
So after 10 years of Liberal rule, things started to crumble. A few finance scandals rocked the party. Jean Chrétien decided to step down to pursue other things, and Paul Martin, our new Prime Minister, was forced to lead a minority government. Between 2002 and 2008, there was 3 national elections. So none of those resulted in a majority government. Through this time, though, a growing movement in the prairie provinces resulted in a rise of the Conservative Party again. But notice, there's no progressive in front of that name anymore. Finally, in 2011, leader Stephen Harper was able to secure a majority government for his Conservative Party. This just shows the failure of the first-past-the-post electoral system that we have here in Canada, as the Conservatives only got 38% of the national vote, whereas all other parties which fall left of center in the political spectrum are what the majority of Canadians believe in and want for this country. Now, to be fair, for those watching in America, even the Conservative Party falls left of center for you, so keep that in mind. However, this is a criticism that could be leveled at the Liberals as well. They never received over 50% of the national vote either. As per Canadian law, a national election could be called in 2015, but does not have to be called until 2016. I am not impartial when it comes to criticizing this current government, whether it's them defunding the arts, only focusing on scientific pursuits that help business, or even not letting scientists speak their mind unless they go through the government PR firms first. These are really divisive topics when it comes to Canada currently. As are what we do with our oil sands, whether the Keystone Pipeline is a good idea, how we treat our First Nations people, and whether or not we want to be looked at as peacekeepers of the world or whether or not we want to increase our military might. When the Conservatives came to power, they promised to be more open and transparent. They've been anything but. Whether it's them disbanding a lot of the environmental protections or walking away from the Kyoto Protocol, this is very often a Canada I am disappointed in rather than proud of. That being said, because of a deeply regulated financial sector, Canada was able to come through the whole worldwide recession fairly unscathed, and this had a lot to do with the leadership of Stephen Harper. It also had a lot to do with the Alberta oil sand monies that was being generated, which is also completely damaging to the Alberta ecosystem. So, even with all of this political intrigue, Canada is a vast and beautiful nation. This is a place where you can go and visit polar bears, or just experience the beauty of the northern lights in any of our territories. Observe the whales or experience the majesty of the boreal forests in British Columbia. The weed isn't bad either. Hike the trails of the Rocky Mountains in Alberta. Marvel at the open skies and rolling fields of Saskatchewan. Nobody really likes Manitoba, although they have a hockey team now, I guess. Skate the St. Lawrence River, sample the maple syrup of Quebec, visit the home of Anne of Green Gables on Prince Edward Island, and meet the nicest people in the world in Nova Scotia or any of the maritime provinces. We are big and complicated and nice and jerks and peacekeepers and rabble-rousers and hockey fanatics and soccer lovers and intensely prideful of our nation while essentially being the 51st state of America. We are all of those things, and I love it. And Nick, someday, I hope you come and visit. So some Russians are bigots, no biggie, right? Well, I think the bigger story here is how intolerant we have become. Be able to see this hot face and receding hairline, so you're welcome, Internet.